happens when an Ultramarine becomes obsessed with Sanguinala? Well, I thought this holiday season we could find out together. My name's Angela and welcome to Hobby Night. It's the holiday season and I always like to do something festive on the channel around this time of year, and last year I painted up the red gobbo, which is why this year I cannot repeat myself, even though I really do like the sculpt that Games Workshop came out with the new red gobbo design. So I went around and I looked through my entire Warhammer backlog and I found a Space Marine that completely inspired me. So today I'm going to turn this honor guard of the Ultramarines into Captain Kringus. When I found this poor Space Marine tucked away amongst my collection, he was already pre-primed in Gracier, which works perfectly for me. Although in hindsight, I do think priming him in white would have probably been a little bit of a better idea, but it's okay, we can work with the Gracier. Now I want to turn this boy into a Christmas dream, and the first step is to paint his armor up entirely in red. And I'm going to use a deep crimson color for this, Flesh Terror's red, and just make sure I get this color pretty much everywhere. We're gonna avoid the cloak as much as we can, but even if we get a little bit of red on that, it's not gonna be a big deal. We can do a cleanup step later. Once I am satisfied with how the red is looking, I wanna move on to the gold trim, and I'm going to be using Duncan Rhodes's Two Thin Coats Dragon's Gold color for this. It's a deep, rich gold, and I think it works perfectly with the red, and what is not Christmas except red and gold? It's super gaudy, looks really regal, and I think it's gonna be perfect for Captain Kringus. Now, we're going to focus on the pauldrons, on the aquillas, and any of the other details like skulls that are on his armor. But there are some elements, like all of the omegas all over his armor, that we're going to be avoiding because I have a different plan for that. The omegas are exactly what inspired this entire project, and I want to do something dramatic with them. So we're going to avoid them for now and get everything else painted up in gold. Now, while this color scheme is predominantly going to consist of red, gold, obviously we've already painted those, as well as green and white, I do want to have a couple of natural color tones in there as well. And this was inspired by some of the designs I was looking up to put on his cape later. You see, I was looking up vintage holly designs and there was a lot of brown tones mixed in with the greens and reds, and I was like, you know what? This is a warrior, let's make him still feel like a warrior and keep some of these elements in a natural leather color tone. So I'm going to paint his loincloth as well as the hilt of his sword up in a light tan color tone to sort of get rid of that red that we've already put down. Once I'm satisfied with how it's looking and it's pale enough, we're going to come back in with snakebite leather and really give it a chestnut vibe. I do really think, like, every time I saw this brown tone, I was just like, chestnut over open fire. And then I was like, no, that's near his balls. No! So that was where my brain went with that. I just thought you might enjoy it, but I really am satisfied with how the leather is looking. And we need to move on to the white element of this color scheme. And oh boy, does this take a while, because I need to clean up the cape, paint that entirely in white, and do all of the details that I didn't paint in gold up in white as well, because some of them are going to become green and the others are going to remain white, and I think this color scheme is really going to start coming together. So let's get to the wreath portion, which has inspired this entire design.
I mean, we're keeping that take just because of the balls thing.
Oh yeah. No, I knew what I was doing. Hey guys, just jumping into the video to remind you to hit that subscribe button and bell icon for notifications so you never miss future content on the channel. And if you're into the spicier side of the hobby, you can find a link to my Only Fanatics down in the link tree below in the description. Now, let's go ahead and get back to the video. I mentioned a wreath. You might be going, Angela, there's no wreath on this Marine. Oh, yes, there is, because you see that Ultramarine symbol on his shield? I am going to turn that into a glorious wreath. And I was actually very nervous about this, but this is what inspired this entire project. So I had to go with it. And I thought, what better way to go about it than painting it on stream with all of you in chat? And this actually went really well. So the first step that we ended up needing to do while I was talking with chat was get a deep green color tone onto all of the Ultramarine symbols. This goes for the ones that are hanging off his loincloth, the one on the shield, any symbols that might be scattered around his armor. We're gonna paint them in the deep forest green. Then I want to come back in with a variety of lighter green tones and start layering on little hash marks, especially on the U on the shield, to create a wreath color tone. This took a little while. I didn't always have the best colors to help them stand out against the darker color tone I had already put down, but eventually I mixed a light yellow green with a white and I got the perfect highlight and the wreath really started to come together. I went back and forth between my base color tone of the dark green and this lighter color tone that I had created and just blended it all together until I had a beautiful wreath on the front of the shield. I then took that lighter green color tone and went back over some of the other symbols on his armor to make sure there was a nice highlight there too, not going into quite as much detail with the hash marks, but wanting to still bring out some other tones there. This especially was really useful when I painted his eyes. I think these are the best Space Marine eyes I've ever painted, and I'm so happy with how they have turned out. The last thing that I was able to get done while on stream was finishing up a little bit of the detail work on the cloak. You see, I wanted it to still have a little bit of a shadowed effect. And so I used Holy White from the speed paint line from Army Painter to apply a wash over the entirety of the cloak and everything else that I had painted white just to add a little bit of shadows in there. After the stream had ended and the Holy White paint had fully dried, I decided to come back in with a light white dry brush over the cloak. It was a little bit splotchy, things hadn't dried exactly how I wanted them to, and I still wanted it to be a more pure white color tone because I wanted it to look like fresh snow. So I think the dry brush really helped, and then after that, I was honestly not feeling the best about it. It did what I wanted, but not to the full extent. So I actually came back in and edge highlighted a portion of the cape, which then got me thinking, okay, if I'm gonna spend some time edge highlighting this white cape, I should also probably wash and highlight all the gold elements too to really help make those pop. I wanted to go the extra mile on this Marine and I did not want to slack on anything. So I'm going to put a Reichland flesh shade over all of the gold elements. And then once that's dried, I'm gonna come back in and lightly dust over the exact same Dragon's Gold color tone I used before, just to bring that shimmer back a little bit. And now he's really starting to look like a Christmas dream, but we're not done. There are still some elements that I want to take care of. Specifically, I want to put a design on that cape. So let's do that next. I mentioned I had been inspired by some vintage Christmas designs that I wanted to put on the cape, and that is what we're going to focus on next. Specifically, I wanted to put a little holly design on the corner of the cape. And to do this, I was very nervous. I wasn't sure this was gonna come out very well, especially since I'm not used to really drawing on patterns to a billowing cape. But I figured this little corner element might be nice. So the first thing I need to do is dot on 2 berries in red. Use Blood Angel's red for this to help it stand out a little bit from the armor and just to be a little bit brighter. Then once I was satisfied with how they were looking, we're gonna come back in and draw on the leaf portions. And I figured the berries would give me a little bit of a guide of where the leaves should go up from. And this did work out really well. I used a deep green color tone, but again, not the same that I used on the wreath. This time I went with Orc Flesh. This is a little bit of a brighter, darker green color, and I think it works perfectly for holly leaves. Then I wanted to highlight them, just like I had done with the wreath. So I went back to that yellow-green color tone that I had used previously, did that first, and then mixed it with white one more time and added another layer of highlight just to really bring out some details on those leaves. After I was done with that, I was looking at the berries and I'm like, you know what? I want more than just 2 berries. I think it needs a third. So I apply 1 more berry and then I highlight each of those berries with a light red tone, just like I did the leaves so that they all look complementary together. The final element that is going to bring this Christmas Marine together is giving him a candy cane sword. It's already painted in red. I figured this would be an easy task, and honestly, this is really where I was inspired by Jessica Negri. She did a recent video where she was dressed as an angel and she had a candy cane sword that she converted, and I was like, you know what? That's exactly what I'm doing on this Marine. It was pretty simple. I drew on the foundation of some straight lines in white, filled those in, and then when I realized some of them were crooked, I came back in with the same red tone I had used on the sword previously and just corrected those white areas. It actually was quite simple. I was really worried this was going to be a lot more complicated, and thankfully I've gotten pretty good over the many years of painting at pulling a few straight lines. So it actually was a lot simpler than I thought, and I would very much encourage you to give this a try in the future because it's not, like, drawing those kinds of stripes is not as tough as I thought it would be. Just trust yourself. You can do this. With the sword looking fantastic, the last thing to take care of is the base. For the base, I was inspired by one other female content creator out there, and that's Nerdforge, because I realized I don't actually have any winter themed like texture paints anywhere in my collection. And I wanted something to be able to make the base look like it was covered in snow. And I watched a recent Nerd Forge video where she used flour, PVA glue, and water, mixed that all together, and created a paste. And I was like, you know what, screw it, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna try it on this base. I did a little bit of testing to see what ratio of flour I might need, found a good amount, and then applied that to the base in an even coating. And I actually really like the way this ended up drawing. It was a little less poofy than I wanted it to be. It did flatten a bit more than I was anticipating, but the texture is exactly what I was looking for. And then to make this Marine sort of match with the red Gobbo that I painted last year, I came back in over that paint and put a little bit of white paint down first, and then we went with Briar Queen Chill. This is a lovely contrast color tone that gives you this sort of ethereal, icy look. It's what I use on the red Gobbo's base, and it works perfectly on this Marine's base as well. But I wanted to emphasize this one a little bit more. So I came back in with a white dry brush over the base to make it look like there was a dusting of fresh snow over everything. Once I was satisfied with that, I came back in and I applied a couple of tufts. I wanted to bring a little bit more green back into the color palette, but also a little bit more white. So I put some white flowers with some green bases. They look lovely. And then the last thing we need to do is rim the base in black to make it look like a finished scene, and we can finally look at the completed model. Ho, 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 I'm here to slay heretics. This is Captain Kringus, my wonderful Ultramarine that I've converted into a Christmas Marine. I love how this project turned out. Something that I talked about in a recent channel update is how I want to really push myself to go the extra mile and bring my paint projects beyond just being table ready. And I was like, you know what? Why do I need to wait until 2024 to do that? I'm gonna start right now with this Christmas Marine, and I think I nailed it. I love all the freehand I did on it. I love the entire concept. Like, it was late at night when I saw this Ultramarine just tucked into like a cabinet, and I was like, holy moly, I can turn that U into a wreath. And I did. And I was very nervous about it because honestly, I wasn't exactly sure how I was gonna do it. I kind of winged it while I was live with chat, and it was a lot of fun doing that. And if you ever do want to hang out with me, I would make sure to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss when I go live for these kinds of painting videos. It's super fun. I love how this guy turned out. It was honestly the seasonal burst that I needed. This season hasn't been the best for me, but bringing this joy into my life with this very dumb, very lovely Space Marine has just been a delight. It's really brought the Christmas joy into my heart. And I hope that it has given you some inspiration to try some freehand. Maybe just turn your Marines into weird creatures and don't follow the normal color scheme. It's really fun to be experimental with them. Anyways, I have been Angela, and I hope that you guys all have a lovely holiday this season, whether you're celebrating Christmas, Hanukkah, or what other season you might be.
Festivus!
Festivus, there you go. Whether you're celebrating any of those things, I hope you have a wonderful time spending it with friends, family, and the people that you love. I want to thank my patrons and YouTube members before I head out this one last time this holiday season for supporting us and making it so like content like this can continue to happen. Without your guys' support, we just would not be doing this, so thank you very, very much. I have been Angela. I will see you in 2024, and I hope you have a wonderful holiday and hobby night.